Okay, so what is refrigeration? Refrigeration is the removal of heat energy. We get various forms of energy, don't we? Chemical, friction, various different forms. And we focus on, in our industry, we focus on heat energy. And we want to remove that from the room, okay? We want to get it outside. So that's what we're doing there. So, if we look at the system here, it doesn't matter how you draw out a system. We've got four main parts. We've got a compressor, we have a condenser, we have a metering device, and we have an evaporator coil, okay? But before we go on to that, always start at the beginning. Just talk about a few things. Right, so we make up things arbitrary. Days of the week, months of the year. You know, we've made that up. Humans have made that up. And we've done the same with temperature. We've got this temperature and pressure relationship, remember that? So we've done the same with temperature. So if we look at temperature, I mean, what is it? If we ask ourselves, what is temperature? So what temperature actually is, they call it average molecular velocity, what we're recording. So if you was to imagine, if we was to look at a compressor, we go down to the molecular scale. We go right down to the molecular scale, okay? So if you was to look at a compressor, we've got all the molecules in there, and what they're doing in that closed environment, in that compressor, they're pinging about. I don't know if you can hear that, but they're sort of bouncing about, okay, off the sides, off the walls. If they're pinging about slowly, that would be a low temperature, a low pressure, okay, because it's a fixed relationship. So that would be a low pressure, low temperature. Now, if we talk about Boyle's law, which we're not really going to go into too much, we don't want to sort of delve into that. What we do with the compressor, we reduce it. We reduce it. So if you imagine, if we look at, when we talk about molecular state, if you imagine you're in your room indoors or wherever, you know, if you imagine that's the compressor, that's the sealed room. You're standing in there, and we've got tennis balls pinging about. It's an analogy that a lot of trainers use, I think. It's because it's quite a good one. And you've got tennis balls just pinging about, bing, 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 bouncing around this room, okay? Now, if you imagine the floor, imagine the floor coming up, and it's reducing that volume, isn't it? It's taking away, that volume now is getting smaller and smaller and smaller. What are them tennis balls going to start doing? That's it, they're going to start pinging about quicker, aren't they? Average molecular velocity. So that's increasing our temperature. That's where we get a higher temperature and a higher pressure from. Them molecules now, the volume is reduced, so there's not so much space in that compressor, and the molecules are pinging about off of the walls. This is why when we touch it, you know, if we touch a compressor body or something, we can feel that heat. Because what we're doing, them tennis balls in there now are just bouncing off of each other. Oh, and they're getting agitated and more wound up and just pinging about off of each other. And that temperature and pressure is rising, okay? So that's one thing. And as I say, we have these four parts in a system. Now it doesn't matter how we draw it. We can have it here, you know? I can have it on this board, which I prefer to use myself. You know, it's got the same compressor, condenser, metering device, evaporator. Doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. I had someone say to me once, "Oh, you shouldn't draw it like that." Ridiculous. Draw it any way you want. You're never going to find a system. Or look, the Lego. Compressor, condenser, metering device, evaporator. It doesn't matter what way we look at it, they all come up with those four main parts. Every system has those four main parts in them, okay? So, if we was to say, why do we need, we've got a coil, we've got a condenser coil, and we've got an evaporator coil, what do we need this for? What do we need these two bits for? You know, if I've got the condenser that sits outside and I've got the evaporator there, surely I can just pipe them together like a washing machine and it's gonna do its job. Well, no, it doesn't work like that, because we have to abide by the law of thermodynamics. A certain law, hot to cold, which I tend to always talk about because I really love it. It comes into play so much. So this is why we need those four pieces. If you was to think about an air conditioning system, okay? Why do we need an air conditioning system? I want to remove that heat energy out of the room when I get too hot. And I need these four parts to do that. I must have those four parts. I'm going to go to my trusty board. I hope you can see that there, if I put that there. So we need these four parts. So what is, if we was to say, what is air conditioning? You know, it ain't a box of tricks. If you was to imagine, say outside you've got, I don't know, 30 degrees temperature, okay? Everything searches for equilibrium. Everything wants to level up in life. Always has done, always will do. Now what's going to happen is that heat energy from outside is going to slowly come through the windows, through the doors, through the brickwork. You know, we do calculations, don't we? Heat load calculations. Excuse me. But that's going to slowly come through into this room and it's going to heat up this room. So I've got 30 degrees outside. About 25 degrees, I'm now, oh dear, I'm dying here. I'm now getting hot. So I want something to get rid of that heat energy, to chuck it outside. But I've got to play by the law of thermodynamics. I've got to stick by this law of hot to cold.